Hey folks, welcome back to the shop. We got a special one for you guys today. Today is going to be 28 gauge. I'm sure you saw the thumbnail. 28 gauge, 2 3/4 inch in a Fiocchi hull. This is a 1 1/8 ounce duplex of TSS and bismuth. I'm dubbing this load, which I've never named a load ever that I've ever come up with. But this one I think is going to deserve a name, and I'm calling it the cheat code. If you don't know what a cheat code is, well, it's kind of used in gaming, and I've got a 15-year-old son, and I'm sure that he has a few cheat codes. Basically, it gives you the ability to maybe advance in levels or, get better weapons, whatever it is. But if there is a cheat code for the 28 gauge, I think that this is probably it. The TSS steel duplex that we've been using for a while, it's good, right? I mean, it's really good. There's been a lot of birds taken down with that. But I think when you see the patterns on this load, you'll see why I say it's the cheat code. So let's talk about it real quick before we get you on this side of the bench and put this thing together. So this is a 1/2 ounce of TSS. The load that I tested and the load that I patterned is 8.5 TSS. I mean, I'm sure it will work good, if not better, with 9s. That's probably more of a duck type of shot size is 9s, even 10s. You could probably do this in 10s if you don't plan on shooting past, 40 yards. But there's probably no need in doing a duplex load with bismuth if you're only shooting past 40 yards. We won't get into that right now. But also, okay, so 8.5 TSS is what I had in this load, a 1/2 ounce of it, 5/8 ounce of bismuth. I had it tested with number 6 bismuth, and the patterns are with number 6 bismuth. You could use 5s if you really wanted to. But for what I see this being used for, I don't think you'd need 5s. I think 6s are going to be better suited to this. So let's talk a little bit about what is it going to do for us, right? What makes this a positive? Because, by the way, this is probably, other than a straight 1 5/8 ounce TSS turkey load, this is probably the most expensive turkey or waterfowl load that I've ever put together. This thing is not going to be cheap, right? You got a 1/2 ounce of TSS, you got 5/8 ounce of friggin' bismuth. So $40 to $45 a pound is half of the shell. $16 to $17 a pound is the other half. So when you mix it all together, it's pretty dang expensive. I don't have the numbers. I'm afraid to put them together, but it's a pretty devastating load. Anyway, let's talk about why we would do it. When I duplexed the steel in the 28 gauge, the 1/2 ounce and 1/2 ounce, the TSS is what's really doing the killing in that load, right? The steel is helping. And look, I'm not saying that steel doesn't kill birds up close, which it does, and it can. It helps fill that pattern out to about the 25 to 30 yard range. But really, that load is put together so that TSS can open up and give us a viable waterfowl pattern at 35, 45, 55, and, well, we could keep going. Now, in this particular load, the bismuth is helping the TSS open up. And matter of fact, It really helps it open up from what I'm seeing. Matter of fact, it's opening it up that we're probably going to need to use a little bit of choke with this. At least my gun is going to want some choke. And when I say some choke, I'm talking about improved cylinder. I patterned this with cylinder choke because that was the best choke that I saw with the TSS steel duplex, right? So I just did that. But what I found out is the cylinder choke is probably not the right choke. It actually does a good job. We'll see the patterns. But here's the deal with, this is why this is the cheat code, okay? Number 6, Bismuth, is getting 1.5 inch gel penetration out to 30 yards. Head and neck, you're probably good to 35. TSS 8.5s in this stuff that I put together, you're getting 1.5 inch of gel penetration to 76 yards. I don't, think that anybody should be shooting at waterfowl at 76 yards. But what I'm saying is it's got the energy to do it out there, okay? So in this particular load, the number 6 Bismuth has the ability to do some killing also, because there's so much of it. 5/8, you say 5/8 of an ounce isn't that much. Well, let me tell you, 5/8 ounce of number 6 Bismuth is 159 pellets. So there's enough pellets in there that that's what a 410 Bismuth, that thing is only 5/8 ounce. We know it kills birds, right? So it's like having a 410 round sitting on top of a 1/2 ounce of TSS, and TSS 8.5s, there's 148 pellets in this load. So this particular load, the total pellet count is 307 pellets. That's a lot, folks, for a waterfowl round. So that's why this is going to be, I think, a bit more special, is because it does open up. It will allow you to use, you're probably going to want to use probably an improved cylinder choke, which could be shot right next with steel, and maybe even some bismuth loads if you're shooting up close. But I'm telling you, you probably would want to put these together and get you a box set aside for, probably that, I don't know, that once in a year hunt that you have, that you want the ability to reach out there to 40, 50, and beyond, if that's what you choose to do, right? But let me tell you, the way the pattern dispersion is, this is a part of the cheat code. You're going to have to be a real bad shot to miss a bird that's, say, between 30 and 40 yards. I'm telling you, that's how crazy these patterns are, right? So anyway, let me get you on this side of the bench. We'll put this thing together. I've got footage of shooting these. The footage is very interesting. I kind of just went straight to doing a progressive patterning. I shot one choke. I shot I shot cylinder choke, because that's what I thought was going to be the best. And I shot from 15, 25, 35, 45, and 55 yards. So we can see what this thing is doing at those different ranges and how it can benefit us, in a duck blind. So we'll take a look at the patterns after we go through the shooting sequence. And then after the patterns, I'll close it out like I always do. So let me get you on this side of the bench, and we'll put these things together. All right, folks. So let's go over components real quick. We're doing a Fiocchi hull, Fiocchi target hull, once fired. We're using Cheddite primers in these hulls. We're using a Gualandi HV28 wad, the big mini container, 1 ounce wad that we do for lead shot, okay? Now, So Cheddite primers, Fiocchi hulls. We have number 8 TSS shot, and we got a bunch of Boss Bismuth number 6 shot. So that's basically it. Now, I know some of y'all already saying, hold up, man. You're putting TSS in an HV 28 watt? Yeah, let's talk about that. So this watt is modified. And I'm gonna show you guys exactly what we do. Because if you get this load, data from my website, it's going to talk about cut and this kind of stuff. So I just want to show it on here so people know what it is. So this is what your wad looks like at the end. So let's talk about this. We take the HV28 wad and we're going to cut it. And where we're going to cut it is right below that little weld line on the wad. If you get these wads, you see that there's a weld line on each side, right? So what I do, I mean, you can freehand it if you want, but what I do is I have a choke tube, 28 gauge choke tube. I'm not even sure what choke this is. It's a modified choke, all right? So what I do is I push the wad up until that is just barely clearing. I don't know if you can see that. It's barely clearing the top of the choke. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna come in here, and look, I'm using a freaking 100-year-old case knife that I've sharpened up, but I'm gonna go in here and I'm just gonna cut all the way around. Now you can use an X-Acto knife. Heck, you can use scissors if that's what you've got, right? So we're just gonna go around all the way around, nice and clean. And we're gonna cut him off. So now we have this. So this is why this is important right here. That's the top of the wad, right? So I'm gonna push this back out, and we have the base. The problem is TSS likes to chew up forcing cones and choke tubes. So we're gonna use this top section as a liner for the bottom section, okay? Now, the way that we have to make this work is we have to cut some of this out. It doesn't have to be precise. I don't know if you can see this, but it's just a small little sliver, and that was a little angle, so I'm gonna straighten it up. Okay. So now I've got a section of that wad cut out, and I'm going to place it inside of the original wad. Just like that. And of course you need to go in here and make it all line up. And here's another quick tip for you. The original slits, when you put this wad back in, the top section, we want the slits to be opposite of each other so we don't run into any scoring potential, okay? So now we have a double layered wad. It's almost overkill, but here's the thing. I don't have to use separate, lining material. I don't have to use, a different wad, an expensive wad. This is probably the cheapest wad that you can use. But anyway, we're using one wad. We do have to do a little bit of cutting, but that's fine. So I'm gonna put that right here, okay? Now, I've already got one cut. Because of YouTube's process, as usual, this is a primed, the powder's been loaded. So let's do this. A ½ ounce of TSS, 218 grains. It's not a lot, folks, but it's a lot of pellets. So 218, we need to take 1 or 2 out. All right, so there we go. 218. I don't know if you can read that. 218.3. So this wad is going to go in first, and that'll just slip right in. Right? Push him down in there. Let's put our TSS in. Okay. Now here's the deal. Actually, let me turn this camera light on. All right. That should be much better. Sorry about that, folks. But anyway, as you can see, that TSS is below. I'm trying to see if I can get this in there. I can't see my camera. That TSS is actually below the base of this wad right here, right? So it's below that, okay? Now, so now we need to put 5/8 ounce of bismuth. So we get our bismuth. 5/8 ounce is 273 grains. First drop was 274, 272.1. So I'm going to go 274. Drop that in there. And there's where our height is of the shot. Now, we come over here to our press. Again, we're not going to go crazy with this crimp. And there you go. A little bit deeper crimp on this particular load, right? But that's fine. We got a nice rounded over edge. Hardly any rattle. So that's your load. That's your cheat code round right there. Okay. So let's do this again. I'll just use this other wad that I've already done. We put it in here. Get it down to the bottom. $218 grains of TSS. So 218.4. And again, he's in there, just that TSS is happy as a lark right in there, right? Okay, now 273 grains of bismuth. So 274.7. If I take one out, we're at 272.8. Look, if you want to do that, you're fine. I would rather have one more pellet. It's not going to hurt the pressure any. So there we go. Get him in the press. Line everything up. And there you go. There's your nice finished round. Again, the cheat code, 2 3/4 inch. I don't even know if I mentioned that, but it's all 2 3/4 inch. So that's pretty much it. Let me get you out to the range, and then we'll take a look at the patterns. TSS Bismuth Duplex, cheat code 15 yards, cylinder choke. TSS Bismuth Duplex, 25 yards, cylinder choke. TSS Bismuth Duplex, 35 yards, cylinder choke. TSS Bismuth Duplex, 45 yards, cylinder choke. All right, folks, going for a poke, 55 yards, TSS Bismuth Duplex. This is 8.5 TSS with a cylinder choke. I don't think most of y'all know how far this really is. All right, folks, let's take a look at these patterns. This was the first shot, 15 yards. Let me tell you, I don't know how many of you guys have ever took your shotgun with a modified or improved modified with, say, a bismuth and shot that and patterned it at 15 yards. I'm betting you're probably talking like, I'm talking about a tiny, matter of fact, we know what it looks like. It takes the heads off of birds, right? We've seen those posts online, okay? So this is 15 yards with a cylinder choke. Now keep in mind, as we progress through these yardages, we're gonna find out that we probably need a little bit more choke, and I don't know how much it would affect this up close, but look here. There's pellets, and they're all bismuth. They're outside of a 30-inch circle at 15 yards. That's crazy, okay? Let me tell you something. If you're hunting a wood duck hole and them jokers are coming down your shirt collar right at shooting hours, teal, buzzing the freaking decoys, first thing in the morning, anything that comes in close, I think you'd have to agree it would be easier to hit that bird with this versus something the size of my fist at 15 yards. I think we can all agree with that. Look, I didn't count these. I just know about how many pellets are in each load. The TSS is kind of more what I'm worried about, and pattern dispersion. But anyway, cylinder choke at 15 yards is pretty wild. I'd say pretty much every pellet is probably right there. So let's look at the 25-yard shot. Okay, 25 yards. We're still, there's a little blotchiness here, a little blotchy there. Again, that's why I think that maybe this choke is a little bit, we need a touch more restriction to keep a core in this thing. But you've got now in 10 yards downrange, you've got a good dispersion on the outside, but man, that 30-inch circle is still filled in real nice. Again, all of this is bismuth. These are larger holes. So that bismuth is what's moving to the outside, okay? Again, I don't know what y'all's patterns with straight bismuth looks like at 25 yards with a modified or improved modified choke, but I'd say it's pretty tight, right? And it's probably a little sparse, especially if you're shooting this 3.5 or number fives, straight fives. So let's look at 35 yards. All right, so here's 35 yards. It actually don't look a whole lot different than the 25 yards. And the reason is all of this is TSS. There's maybe one or two TSS outside. Again, it's mostly bismuth on the outside. And look, there's some bismuth in here. It's actually kind of hard to tell the difference in the two. But anyway, it's a really good pattern at 35 yards. But if we were starting to count these pellets, I think you'd really see that this pellet count is super high at 35 yards compared to, say, a bismuth and especially a steel load, right? So let's look at 45 yards. Okay, 45 yards. Man, look, I would never complain about that at 45 yards. at this point, almost everything in the circle is TSS, which, I mean, that's what we want. And we've got a great pattern at 45 yards. You know, there's not at 45 yards, by the way, a bird is going to be flying unless you're swatting at a cripple or something. So you can imagine the size that would have to try to weave its way through there, and there ain't much getting through there. That is a great pattern at 45 yards, mostly TSS. That's what's doing the work. At this point, the number 6 bismuth is, well, it's almost like it just shouldn't even be there because it's just not going to retain the energy, maybe on a head or a neck hit. But the TSS is what we're counting on. That's what's making this pattern up. Okay. Now, let's move on to 55 yards. Okay, 55 yards. So this is where, I mean, don't get me wrong, this is a really strong pattern, but one thing that I can tell you is there's a lot of TSS that have come out of this pattern at this point. I mean, that's still a really good pattern, but we're starting to see holes. I think improved cylinder all the way across the board would probably work with this, because one of the intended uses would be to go out to possibly 55 yards and maybe even further. As you can see on the video of me shooting these things, I don't know if a lot of people know how far 55 yards is. It is a poke, okay? Excuse me. But anyway, still a pretty daggum good pattern at 55 yards. So that's it, man. I mean, I probably need to put this thing together and pattern it in an improved cylinder and see what it does. This was through a Benelli Super Black Eagle. Maybe shoot it through a 2 3/4 inch only gun, like my pointer, or maybe an over and under. See how it reacts in those guns. But look, man, you can't shake a stick at that. But anyway, let's go back to the bench and we'll finish up. All right, so what y'all think about them patterns? Look, I may be crazy and think that this is, you know, the best thing since sliced bread. And actually, it is and it isn't, right? And why would I say it is and it isn't? Look, anybody who puts this stuff together, I think they're going to be, wow factor, I guess, is probably, you know, going to be there. But if you're budget minded, the wow factor is also going to be there. That's the bad thing about this. We could develop and put together all this stuff that doesn't even exist commercially, but my goodness, this is going to be some money spent. Now, is it going to be well spent? Yep, it will be well spent. That is for sure. I need to go through and do a breakdown of what this actually does cost in today's money, March the 29th, 2024, right? I think that will even surprise me. But anyway, pretty good stuff. I don't know if y'all agree with me, but I think it does need to be choked down to probably improve cylinder, which would be a good thing, because I know shooting the TSS Duplex with steel, for my gun, cylinder choke just worked the best, right? I'm talking about at range. You've seen the videos of me patterning that. But improved cylinder is going to give us a little bit more options that we don't have to change the choke, because there's some steel loads. You'd be surprised how well that 3/4 ounce of steel, or even that newer, the 13/16 ounce in the Cheddite hull that's part of the data, how well it shoots through a improved cylinder choke. I think improved cylinder choke is probably the going choke for steel shot in a 28, because most of our shots with steel are going to be close. They're going to be, you know, 30, 35 yards and in with decoy and type stuff. But anyway, the choke compatibility is good. You can use improved cylinder and still get this crazy pattern. Can y'all believe the pattern this thing throws at 15 yards? To me, that's mind-boggling. I mean, I couldn't tell you how many birds I have missed burnt through the decoys by teal because I'm pulling up. Holy crap, boo, boo, boo. I had the thing right on them, but knowing that that water shot was probably 6 inches from the body of the bird. Now, I've also had shots where we've got them coming down our shirt collar and I pull up, boom, and there's nothing left of that bird. It just, I mean, literally a wall of shot. It cuts the bird in half. And yeah, did we kill the bird? Were we successful at harvesting it? Absolutely. But did we probably even make an attempt to eat that joker? Probably not. So there's kind of, I think this would be great for enclosed stuff. But that's really not where this is going to shine. It's going to shine at like 30 yards and 40 yards because you have this wall of TSS that's throwing a great pattern that's going to reach out to 45 and 55. And by the way, I mentioned this when we were going to the patterns, and I mentioned this in the 410 progressive video. If you guys have never walked out to 50, 55 yards, and I'm talking about with a laser rangefinder and hit 50 and pull up and just observe what a duck. Matter of fact, I don't even know if you could identify a duck if it didn't get any closer than 55 yards and it was flying at dusk or dawn. I mean, I'm not saying you couldn't. I know there's some of us that can identify a duck literally by the silhouette, pintails, whatever. I understand that. What I'm saying is 55 yards is a long way, man. And I don't want to get on a big rant. Okay, here we go. It's rant time, folks, right? Duplex, stacks, whatever people call them, right? The only way these things make sense, the only way in my eyes, look, I'm not a scientist. I just, this is what I observe, right? The only way duplexing makes sense is when the shot complements each other in some aspect, whether it makes the other shot better or something else, okay? What I mean by that is TSS duplex steel. The steel is really there to open up the TSS because TSS has a very hard time opening up to create a decent pattern. TSS and bismuth, okay? What I'm finding out with this load is the TSS actually opens up more. Don't know why, we don't know what it is. I don't have a 60,000 frame per second camera to be looking at this stuff. But anyway, that was my observation. But here's what I can tell you. If you're shooting steel and steel, okay, number 2 steel and number 4 steel, and you got, let's talk about a 28 gauge. Let's say it's a 3/4 ounce load, like a factory 3-inch, 3/4 ounce load, and they're stacking or duplexing or blending the shot. There's not enough pellet count of the larger shot to actually make it viable at an extended range that you would actually want to be using it, okay? I'll give you an example. 3.5 blended, duplexed, stacked boss shot in a 28 gauge. So they have a 3.5 blend, they call it. And I think I did a what's in the box on it. If I haven't, I need to. But anyway, this stuff is about half of it is number 3s, half of it is number 5s. Well, there's barely enough shot. Well, not barely. There's enough shot with both of them combined for it to be viable. But if you take the number 5 shot out of the equation, which you have to do once you go beyond the range that 5 shot would be effective, okay? Let's say 40 yards. So now we expect that number 3 shot to continue to take game beyond the 40 yards. Well, the problem is there's so little of it in the load to begin with, and it's opened up so far that you're likely not even going to get a hit at a bird at 45 or 50 yards, okay? And look, I understand people are posting online. You'll hear it every day, see it every day, especially during gun season. Man, this 3-5 blend is the Widowmaker. This 3-5 stack, this 2-4 stack, whatever it is, I promise you, those people are, I promise you they're getting good results. They're seeing dead birds. I get it. But what I can promise you is every bird they're shooting is probably 35 yards or in. Okay? They're coming into decoys. They're below timberline. It's a close bird where all the shot is acting like, all the shots working at that point. That's what I'm getting at. So it would be better for that person to use all number 5s or all number 4s, because now you have more pellet count in the total round. Because I'm pretty sure if you take a blended stacked round with the same type of shot, steel, bismuth, even TSS, I don't know why you would stack TSS. That makes no sense to me. It's the same density. So it's much better to have the pellet count up so you can increase your pattern density for a given range. I mean, it's not going to make it magical, right? I don't know. That's kind of a rant. But with this load, it's very different. The number 6s, yes, they die at like 38, 39 yards. When I say die, I mean they're not packing the energy enough to really kill a bird. Head and neck, maybe out to 40, right? But that's fine. Up close, they're working, and there's a lot of them. There's 159 of them to be exact. So there's actually more bismuth pellets in this load than TSS pellets, right? So up close and out to 35 yards, man, this is a swarm of pellets in a large pattern, and the pattern is dense all the way around. If you look at those patterns, there's not, it doesn't just all of a sudden fall apart like a lot of bismuth loads do. So I don't know. Anyway, that's my rant about duplex and why duplexing similar shot just makes no sense to me. You'll never see me doing a duplex of steel and steel, bismuth and bismuth, TSS. I just won't. It just doesn't make sense. Another example that I'm looking into is TSS and lead. I think that would be great for turkey, okay? That's probably will come down with the next drop of loads that I put on the website. So keep a lookout for that. That'll be down the road. But I think, matter of fact, if you think that was a good idea, let me know. Matter of fact, if you think any of this stuff is good, bad, or indifferent, post in the comments down there. But anyway, it was fun. It took me a good while to figure this load out. And so here's when I started doing this load, I knew it was going to be expensive, and I knew TSS will chew up a gun barrel. So I wanted to not use the TPS wads. I know that bismuth is very gentle on barrels, so we can expose the bismuth. So I thought, well, why don't we take an HV28 wad, cut it, take the top, double line it, and I don't have any of these wads. I'm looking on my bench because trust me, my bench is a plethora of goods right now. But I don't see any of these spent wads. I think Christina, they were inside, and I think they didn't make their way outside because they made their way in the trash by her. But anyway, there's not even a pinhole. And I've even heard some people online talk about using this wad just by itself with TSS. It could be possible, or lining it with Mylar. It could be possible, but look here, man. If I can double line it and be extra sure that I'm not going to get any kind of breaching of that wad with TSS, I'm going to do that. So at the end of the day, we're only using one very inexpensive wad. We do have to cut it. And because we cut it, now we have the room for the volume. So 1 1/8 ounce of this stuff actually fits in a 2 3/4 inch hole. So once I had that done, then I had to figure out a powder to get some velocity without pressure. I started off in one direction and I ended off in another one. I will tell you this, the velocity of this is 1,249 feet per second. That's the muzzle velocity. I wanted to keep it below 1,300 because, again, I have experienced a lot of fracturing of the bismuth, and I didn't want that. I want the bismuth to still stay together. So 1,249 feet per second is the muzzle velocity. The PSI, we got a lot of room to work with the powder that I've chosen for this. So look here, if you get this data and you want to crank him up to, 1350, you probably could and still be safe. Obviously, you'd have to get it tested and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, that's pretty much it. Actually, you know what? I have to make a quick correction here. I'm looking at my sheet. I tested with number 5 bismuth. So this patterning is number 6. I tested with 5, but the pressures will be the same. I think that's about it. I'm running out of things to talk about this load. If you want to get these loads, they're available on my website, bullet225ho.com. So basically it's my YouTube channel name.com. You'll see all these loads available up there. I've got a lot of what's in the boxes to put together. I'm going to be getting back out to the farm. I think I'm going to do some patterning of some 7/8 ounce 410 stuff. Turkey season is upon us. It's actually open here in Georgia right now. So I'd like to get that 7/8 ounce video out, even though the data's out there. A lot of people don't know the data's out there until the video pops up and they look at it and then they're like, oh man, I can go buy that data. So they go get it. But anyway, keep a lookout for that. Sorry, it's taken a week to get this out here. And I know it's not duck season right now, but this will, look, you can save up throughout the year and obtain your TSS and your bismuth, everything you need to put this together. All right. So thanks for watching, and we'll see y'all next time.